everyone, it's Theo from Theo Spanish Fast Learning, and welcome back for another video on the channel. Today we're gonna be focusing on conjugation phenomenon in Spanish. Yeah, we're changing the theme a little, like since the last two videos weren't about that. We're starting about conjugation tips and what a better way to start learning conjugation as learning this phenomenon called in Spanish la Enclisis. Like, there's no really a word in English to call it, like, because it's a Spanish exclusive phenomenon, and we'll see because of that usually people have trouble with it because it doesn't exist in English. So we'll see how it works in Spanish. Basically, let's go without further ado. Let's start this video about la Enclisis. First of all, what is this phenomenon? What is it? It's a conjugation phenomenon in Spanish, which consists in sticking the pronoun, so basically a pronoun that you have in a sentence, a normal or regular pronoun that you have, whether it's direct or indirect. It's like indirect, like, indirect. Whether it's direct or indirect, there's no difference between the both of them. It's the fact that you need to stick the pronoun at the end of the verbal form instead of just putting it regularly before or after the verb as you would do like in English, for example. This phenomenon was really important back in the days, like in the 17th, 16th century, because this was done for many tenses in Spanish. Nowadays, it's not used a lot anymore, but you still need to use it in three contexts, which are the following ones: infinitive forms, progressive forms, and imperative affirmative forms. So those are called infinitivo, progresivo or gerundio, and imperativo, affirmativo in Spanish, if you're wondering what those are in Spanish. So basically you need to do it for the basic verb, the infinitive one, the progressive form, which is the equivalent basically of the ing in English, at the end of the verb, like to notice that the action is like progressing. And for the imperative affirmative, because in Spanish you have two types of imperative, the affirmative one and the negative one, and you just only need to use this Enclisis phenomenon for the positive and affirmative one, not the negative one. But we'll see that in a second with some examples. So let's start with examples about infinitive for la Enclisis. So the Enclisis, like, I've chosen three examples for infinitive form. We'll tackle them all right now. The first one is this sentence: quería hablaros, which means basically in English, I wanted to talk to you. In this sentence, you have the verb hablar and the pronoun os, and both of them are stuck. You need, for this phenomenon, to stick the pronoun at the end of the verbal form, so that's what I did basically here. In English, you don't have like this phenomenon. Basically, the pronoun is like separated from the verb, and in this context it's also separated by the preposition to, but in Spanish you need to stick the pronoun at the end. So in this case you have basically an indirect pronoun, which is os in this sentence. And I just noticed for you, under the sentence you have hablar, which is basically the infinitive form of hablar. Just for you to notice. Second example is the one I wrote under, which is esta patata puedes comerla. So basically in English that means this potato, you can eat it. And basically you have the same phenomenon, but like with a direct pronoun referring to potato, which is it in English. In Spanish it's la, and you need to stick it after the verb, which is comer, and basically it means to eat in English. And I just noticed also for you, like, comer is the infinitive form for comer. It's like easy, I know, but like we'll see that with example for progressive and imperative, sometimes it's not that easy to notice the verbal form in which on which you need to stick the pronoun. So I think it's a good idea like to explain you why you need to put the pronoun at the end. It's because comer is like an infinitive in this case. And the last example I've chosen is olvidé decírtelo, which means I forgot to tell you about it. So this one is a bit trickier because in this case you have two pronouns in the sentence. One is direct, it's it, and the other is indirect, it's you. But in Spanish, you definitely need to put both pronouns, to stick both of them at the end of the verb. So it's like a double Enclisis, basically. And you need like to stick both pronouns at the end. You can't just stick one and not the other. Basically, you need to do it for both of them. And like sometimes it might be required for you like to write a written accent. So that's the case here. You need to put a written accent above the I in order like to keep the coherence in phonetics. You can watch my video about word stress if you don't understand what I'm talking about right now. So basically decir is the infinitive form for decir, I noticed it. But how can you know which pronoun you need to stick first and which one do you need to put at the very end of the word? Well, basically you need to put first the indirect pronoun and then the direct one. So in the video I've chosen to spot the indirect pronouns in red and the direct one in light blue, so that it's easier like for you to notice the order of the pronouns when you need to use a double Enclisis. So yeah, I think that's all for the examples about infinitive. Let's go about examples with progressive forms. The first one is esta agua, estás bebiéndola ahora. So this water, you're drinking it right now. So basically, here you have a progressive form, bebiendo, which is the drinking in English. The form was ing, and you need to stick the pronoun to those forms also. So basically, in English you have it, and it's separated from the progressive form. But in Spanish, you need to stick it at the end. So I noticed for you that bebiendo is the progressive form of beber. So that it's like easier for you to understand what you need to do here, and you need to put the pronoun at the end because you need to make the Enclisis. Second example, está haciéndose pasar por alguien más, is pretending to be someone else. So this one is a bit tricky because basically in Spanish you have a verb which is hacerse pasar por, which means to pretend to be, and this verb is a reflexive verb, so that's why you need to conjugate it as if as a verb which is reflexive, so using the pronoun. And in the progressive form, as I told you, you need to stick the pronouns at the end, so that's basically what I did whilst writing this example down. So you have haciéndose. Basically, this pronoun is like not translatable in English because the verb in English is like not reflexive, so there's no really point in trying to spot the pronoun in English. There's no pronoun in the English sentence, but in Spanish you do need this pronoun, and you do need also to stick it at the end to make this phenomenon called Enclisis. So basically, in this sentence, haciendo is the progressive form for hacer, and in this sentence, you're not using just hacer, you're using hacerse, and because it's a progressive form, you need to put the se at the end and to stick it at the end of haciendo. I hope it's understandable. And the last example, I also chose an example, a case of double Enclisis. And this time I hope you will understand it. Tengo que darte el archivo compartiéndotelo. Sorry about my pronunciation. I need to give you the file by sharing it to you. So the first case of the sentence darte. We've already tackled it before in the video. I won't go back about it. It's quite easy. It's a case for the infinitive form. The one which is interesting in this sentence is compartiendotelo, which is quite weird maybe for you, but like if you analyze it step by step, it's not that hard. First you have compartiendo, which is the progressive form for the verb compartir, which means to share. So it's the sharing. And then you have the two pronouns stuck at the end, te, which means you, and lo, which means it. And as we already saw for the first example of double Enclisis, first you need to put the indirect pronoun you, so te, and then you need to put the direct pronoun, so it. It's basically lo in Spanish. So compartiendotelo. And once again, this written accent above the e is because of phonetic rules in Spanish. My video about word stress is on the channel if you need some explanation about it. So basically, that's all for the progressive forms. We'll finish the video about the imperative forms, and for those I've chosen examples that I've decided to compare for you between the positive imperative, in which you need to use the phenomenon of Enclisis, and the negative one, it's also called the defense in Spanish, in which you don't need to use, so that you can really see the difference between the two. So the first example I've chosen is hazlo. It means do it, and as you can see, you have this pronoun stuck at the end, that in English it's totally separated from the verbal form. So hazlo, you have the direct pronoun lo stuck at the end of the hath form. But if you turn that into the negative imperative in Spanish, you don't need to stuck the pronoun at the end anymore. So you have no lo hagas, which means do not do it, or don't do it in English, basically. So in this case, you don't need to stick the pronoun at the end. So don't try to translate it like no hagas lo or things like that. That won't work in Spanish. Just use the Enclisis for the positive forms of imperative. And I noticed for you just under that hath is the imperative for the to, for the verb hacer. Let's talk about the second example, hábleme, which means tell me or speak to me. So once again, you have the same example for an indirect pronoun, which is me in this case, translated by me in Spanish. But if you turn that into the negative form, you don't need to put the pronoun, to stick it at the end anymore. No me hable, which means do not tell me or do not speak to me. So basically, I want you to be aware that you need to stick this pronoun at the end in imperative, but only for the affirmative, the positive forms of imperative. So that's really important for you to notice that in Spanish there's two ways of conjugating in imperative, and in this case you have to differentiate to make the difference between the two, because one of them is using Enclisis and the other one is not using it. So it's important for you to make the difference between those two. I've noticed for you that habler is the imperative for usted, for the verb decir, so that it's understandable for you in this case. And the last example, but not the least, is once again a double Enclisis phenomenon. I've chosen the example decídmelo, which is tell me about it. Once again, you have two pronouns and you have to stick both of them at the end of the verb, the imperative form of the verb, which is basically decir. In this case, you have the pronoun me and the pronoun it, and you need to stick them both me and lo at the end of decid, so that you obtain decídmelo in one word only. In English, you have 4 words to say that. In Spanish, 1 word is more than enough. And when you switch this sentence to negative imperative, you can see that you got the 4 words back in Spanish. No me lo digáis. In you don't need like to stick the pronouns at the end anymore. It would be wrong to do it actually. So don't do it in negative imperative. So basically that means do not tell me about it in the second sentence. And I've noticed for you that decid is the imperative for vosotros for the verb decir. And that's it for the 3 cases. I've chosen 3 examples for all 3 cases with all kinds of pronouns, and I hope that you understood well how the phenomenon works. I'm just gonna end the video talking about the other tenses and modes. You need to be aware of the fact that the phenomenon I've told about in the past minutes is just about infinitive, progressive, and imperative positive. All the other tenses and modes in conjugation won't use this phenomenon. So, for example, I've chosen for you just an example in present and indicative, presente del indicativo in Spanish. You have, for example, te lo digo, I tell you it. So basically, you don't stick any pronoun at the end of the verb, the verbal form. Sorry, you do not have to stick this pronoun at the end, and do not do it if it's not any of the 3 cases we've tackled in the video today. So that's all for today's video. I hope you guys enjoyed. If it's the case, don't forget to like, sub, comment, and share. And we'll see each other in the next video. I hope you have, guys, an amazing day. Take care.